Alright, this is Chris Hatala, aka GhaleonUnlimited, and this is Phantasy Star Generation 4. I started this project in 2018. I've been a lifelong fan of Sega and Phantasy Star, and was kind of shocked that no one had really gone in and fixed some of the inaccuracies in the translation. Chiefly the planet Palma being the planet Parma, which pretty much drove me crazy for like, how many, 20 years, 25 years or whatever. So, looked around a little bit online, how to, start getting into ROM hacking. All I wanted to do was change the word Palma into Parma, to Palma, to change Parma into Palma. And, while I was learning to ROM hack, I ended up, working on just like writing the script, like on like, like a text document. And I talked to a couple cool people on romhacking.net, and they pointed me to this awesome thing called disassemblies, which basically means that you don't have to do pretty much any work, especially to do something as easy as like changing the script. You just have to make sure like the coding is kind of in the same place, and then you can just like type away. Like Civilization 1 on PC had all the text for all the countries, all the people that would talk. All the text was just in a text document, so you could literally just type it and make it anything you wanted. So, while there ended up being more programming involved eventually, this really wasn't all that different from the outset with that. So, I'm not really one who watches streams or really even cares about streaming, but I thought it would be fun to kind of do like a creator's commentary, like a director's commentary on like a DVD. I've never worked on anything like this before. It was a lot of fun, and I had some awesome help from so many people who I will be thanking over the course of this Let's Play for their contributions. So, right off the bat, eventually I made two versions of the patch, one called the Working Designs patch and one called the Purist patch. So, without getting too into it yet, the first difference is Alice calls Rudy a slacker. Wake up and get ready, slacker. And in the original, it was just wake up and get ready, because, I felt like people could interpret that as I was adding something maybe to her characterization a little bit. So, yeah, so, just the dialogue ended up, I wanted to kind of naturalize a little bit better. So, instead of her saying, and Alice says in the original, she says, sorry, full screen projector. There we go. Now we can see everything. Boy, I look red, don't I? I couldn't figure out the video settings on this thing very well, so we'll just see what happens, and for part 2, we'll change it. Anyway, so in the original, she says, like, oh, you're my partner. Better put your heart into it. And just thinking about like your late 20s, badass lady like Alice, like I just not sure she would say like, you better put your heart into it. So, knowing these games pretty well, over, playing them over, the course of decades, and especially Phantasy Star 4 for having such a big script, I feel like you can get, a really good sense of the characters from the original English translation. And I used the website, the Cutting Room Floor. I used their look at the different prototype English scripts, and they compared them to the final script. And you could just see this on Cutting Room Floor website. Type in like TCRF Phantasy Star 4. And they also have translation notes of like what the original Japanese translation was. So they don't have a word for word translation of the original Japanese script, but clearly they're they basically translated behind the scenes or whatever, and have a firm grasp of the language. So so here's like some more. I can't remember how Chaz or Rudy phrases this in the original, but I just we wanted it to sound just a little bit everything more natural. So like call it like a college town instead of like university city or university town. I can't remember what he says anymore, but yeah. So it's like yeah, and same thing, like the message originally just said like just come, and it's just like that just seems like a little silly. So like something this official perhaps might say, urgent, details, upon arrival, something like that. So we just try to take a look at the whole script and really think about like, if this was a book, and these characters were, in a novel, because they are so well-rounded and depicted, in the original game, that we could make that shine even more a little bit in their personalities, I think. So another version of the working designs versus the purist patch is Alice kind of making a thing here about, Rudy, Chaz, he's supposed to be still a kid, he's 16, he's supposed to be a little immature, pretty much leading all the way up to like this outburst that he has right at the end of the game. And we kind of felt like the game should kind of that should come across more, that he's young and that he's not ready yet for what is going to be kind of thrust upon him. So in this one, I just had more, that he's like still a kid, you can go to college, like have a couple drinks, and that's kind of on the back of his mind, and she shuts him down. And in the purist, I just said, we're not going to have time. Yeah, and I thought, we'll see what you're made of would be, kind of a nice way to start off. Oh, for part 2, geez, I'll have to go over the intro. I barely changed anything in this, this little piece here. I think it's really well written, as is the intro. And, I just, like, we go on this on my podcast a little bit, Found in Translation. The first couple are pretty much about Phantasy Star and about, this project, specifically. And, lost my train of thought. But yeah, so, and like, one of my interviews is with the awesome dude, his name's BGE, who translated Phantasy Star 4 into French from the original English translation. And it's like, the original script was good, but compared to, some other works of the time, like, I'm a really big Lunar fan, and regardless of how people feel about, working designs, sense of humor, or, putting pop culture references into the game, they're clearly, like, good writers. And again, like, whether the style of that writing, fits, or you think they made too many changes, that's your call to make, as an RPG fan. But they're clearly, very good conversational writers, have good senses of their character, and, were excellent voice actors too, and that really brought those games alive. And Phantasy Star 4 was pretty clearly, it seems pretty clear that the English translation was done, in Japan, as so many games were, at the time. And, it's like, and these are commercial, endeavors. It's one thing to look at, a script like 30 years later and say, like, oh, well, this could have been better, or, blah, blah, blah. But, all these awesome, people at Sega, they were making a commercial product. It had deadlines. They couldn't, they couldn't sit for a couple months on end and, pick 8-hour days to just tweak and write the script and, talk to other people about it. You just don't have that luxury when you're making, a commercial endeavor. A funny note at the beginning here, speaking of, like, the Rudy and, kind of adding to his personality a bit. This beginning part, like, makes no sense. And he's like, oh, I've lost track of, like, Alice. It's like, she's literally an eyesight. Like, I know this is an RPG, but this is how I try to, think about things from, like, a writing angle. So, I really, like, struggle with this. As like, what's his excuse for, like, losing Alice? Is he, like, so for a while I had that, like, one of the college students, like, gave him, like, a drink or something and, like, messed with him. And, people were just like, this is, like, a little ridiculous, a little bit, like, over the line. And my eventual editor who stepped in, his name's Squirrel2, just out of nowhere, he was like, hey, I really like the project after I published it and everything, but I'd like to help. There's typos and line breaks, and I want it to be as best as it can be. And most of the people who've reached out to me with feedback, because I try very hard to welcome feedback. It's a part of the creative process, and you're gonna reach a plateau if you you don't seek feedback, and if you're afraid to do that. And I sometimes can have a very fragile ego, so this actually was like a big growing experience for me to be cool about not taking it personally and just keeping focus on, like, here's how we can make the game better, basically. Yeah, so this thing about, like, it's like a college town, so it's like, I put some, like, party jokes kind of in here a little bit. But the thing is, anything that I added, I felt at least like it was in the spirit of the actual game. So obviously this little exchange is not in the purist patch, but, Rudy remarks outside, when you go outside this building and, like, into the town, you go into one of the dorms, he's like, these kids, like, don't seem to do any work. It's like, what kind of school is this, So, it's like I wasn't intending to just go like, oh, like, working designs, let's just change everything. Everything that I pretty much came up with, I hope, you feel is in spirit of the game. And like a lot of these, these books and, like, it's cool that you can, like, search bookshelves and search kitchens and stuff like that. But, if it doesn't really say anything interesting, it's kind of like, that's cool you can search it, but, like, what's really the extra incentive for the player to do that? So, we just came up with, like, silly things the books can say. Usually something, like, in-universe, but, like, like a little silly or something. Like, Luvanian geometry. Dr. Lovano is, the doctor who makes your spaceship in the very first Phantasy Star. And, as we're gonna go downstairs here, his bust, it says, like, Dr. Lubitz in the original English script. That's supposed to be Dr. Lovano, like, from the very original. So, Japanese gamers got a fairly different game than we got in the Western world, because Phantasy Star in English is kind of a mess. Each of the games have different spellings for proper nouns, and especially in Phantasy Star 4, especially, kind of like just throws a lot of them kind of like out the window. So restoring that was one of the very first impetusi of the project. Yeah, so this is foreshadowing to the end of the game too. Like, it's an astronomy book, but it's saying there's, like, weird things flying around Algo. So maybe, someone has noticed in the past, some weird things that maybe pop up every 1,000 years or so. Like, we don't know. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, so a lot of this is really to accentuate, Rudy's kind of more, la-di-da kind of attitude. He's a young kid. He's 16. He's not ready for, all the stuff that's going to happen to him and to his mentor and all his friends. So, yeah, so we already talked to him. Yeah, and, I would suggest if you, just want to, like, speed through this or something and just, like, flip to the script, you can, like, mute me or whatever. I don't really care. Put it on, like, 2x or something. Yeah, so what does he say at the beginning? I think he just says, like, what are you doing with lethal weapons? So, to kind of explain, like, his freak out, it was more like, oh, well, maybe he thinks he's being robbed, stuff like that. Yeah, so if you play it, as you can see the URL up here, ps4.gamesunlegit.com. My podcast is up on there too. Yeah, this is not in the purist patch. It's a little joke that I put in, because a lot of people think that. Yeah, so this is an example of a lore that, was out there in now the English translated fandom. And I'm going to do this again, actually. Rebecca Kapowski, her site is sceneryrecalled.com. If you're a big Lunar or Phantasy Star fan especially, or she does a lot of stuff with other RPGs too. But the Phantasy Star Compendium is this amazing kind of like Phantasy Star Bible, and she translated it all into English and just for fun, and it's on her site. So I was able to put a lot of this lore. So, like, this is what, if you've ever played Phantasy Star, you know that the years are listed as AW and BW. What does that mean? Well, like, before Wise and after Wise, the first Landale king who kind of like united the planet Palma, basically. So, just, again, like his immaturity, like, oh, he wants to like poke around the college town, but he doesn't yet see, he doesn't have a lot of perspective, as I did not, when I was 16. So here we are, fixed Dr. Lubitz. It's Dr. Lovano, that's his name, so let's call him that. Yeah, and, and it's like, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel or anything for, we did go over every line of dialogue, but, you know, so like, oh, you can, I forget what she says in the middle, but in the original, I mean. Oh, and I'm trying to scroll a little bit sooner. I read kind of fast, a lot of too fast sometimes, 'cause I have ADHD, and yeah, same thing. Like, he said something similar that just kind of didn't make as much sense in the original, so we just made it like, why aren't you writing this down? Your test is tomorrow. Yeah, so I'll try to scroll a little bit slower on purpose. Yeah, so this is a book title that just made up. So, you know, just make it like an interesting history book. So these are more Alice of Landale, obviously Alice, the first heroine of Phantasy Star. These are two king. I think Aura's was her father. I can't remember, actually. Repart Lashik, the bad guy, was called Lassic in the original translation. Poetry by Meow, because why not? And of course, who would compile it besides Lutz, kind of the main character of all 3 main Phantasy Star games, I guess. Yeah, so this original book, I think it says something about like ancient dialects or something like that. So kind of went a step further and foreshadowed this Dizorian's accent. So we'll get to that very long time from now on Dizoris. But there's a bartender, a friend of Raj's, that's supposed to have, yeah, that's just like a video game joke like there, because obviously we control his actions. Who's supposed to have like a thick accent. Like, if you play Phantasy Star 2, especially Phantasy Star 1, the Dizorians have a weird speech pattern, and in 2, they basically all sound like guys from Pittsburgh. They say like Dern, and like you have to meet people from Pittsburgh too, but they have their own dialect. This is the closest thing I could kind of come up with how these people talk, so we'll get to that much later. So this character, he actually has a name in the compendium. It wasn't in the game, so like, let's give him a name because he has one. Oh, he said, you must be Alice, and you're assistant Rudy. Oh, I forget what she says in the original. She's like, oh, he is, but he's my junior, but he's my partner. I can't really remember. So just try to come up with a more clever way to say that, kind of in one line. So it's like, oh, he's my equal, but he's not my equal, you know. She does say, let's get down to brass tacks, and I did not know what that meant when I did my first draft of this, and now I know that's a real phrase, so I should put that back in there, actually. Yeah, so things, you know, like this aren't that different. Sometimes we just phrase things just slightly different, or just made a sentence, like, try to slightly make, be more accurate, I guess. Yeah, so this is a little bit, Michael Cohen was on my mind when I wrote this, so the word fixer was in my mind, and that's kind of what she does, even though she's not a lawyer. Yeah, so just making, you know, the dialogue like a little bit snappier, I think, is what we were trying to do. And, like, you can see from his portrait here, you know, he's obviously a little bothered by her asking questions. So, you know, the dialogue, you know, could reflect that. So, you know, we just made him a little more anxious with, you know, some double questions there. And, like, hey, like, just do your job. Just kill these things. And why are you asking questions? Oh, so there's a couple more silly things I put back here. Yeah, so it was like an archaeology book. Let's give it like a silly name or whatever. So Corona Temple from Phantasy Star 1, which is now back in Phantasy Star 4. We'll see that later. And yeah, so, you know, it's a university. Is going to have like some moldy documents that were important at some time. Of course, Alice, that's how she begins her quest. She gets a black market road pass in AW 342. Oh yeah, so like this is an example of just stuff that we're trying to like make a little more clear. So like I think he says in the original, maybe he's afraid of the monsters. What's like no shit, like well, I'm gonna try not to swear this thing crap. Like obviously, you know, he's afraid of the monsters, so you know, maybe why he's so perturbed is that, you know, the monsters would get into town and, like, really get him into trouble. You know what I mean? So, just trying to, like, really, you know, kind of overanalyze the dialogue is what we're kind of trying to do, and make sure everything just makes as much sense as it can. And, like, let's make this a little faster. And, oh, I didn't show it this time. I'll show it next time. But I am playing on my original Sega Genesis from 1991 that came with Sonic. I was a Nintendo kid, but I bought into the hype, and I'm so glad that I did. Sega's been my favorite game company ever since then. And this is a copy of Phantasy Star 4 that Oh, yeah, so I can't remember why I put this in the purist, but, you know, it's like a little bit different, you know. So, you know, obviously she's like, oh, did you know, picture like the guys from Contra or something? So instead of just saying, like, oh, like, you don't think we can do the job or whatever, you know, it's just like, just to make it a little more fun. Yeah, calling him Pee-wee. I took that out of the purist one, too. I just made me laugh. Yeah, so a lot of the characters have last names. That's not in the original English. And his last name actually, you know, has some relevance, because Melee was, you know, a region in Phantasy Star 1, so clearly there's meant to be, you know, some kind of connection to, say, like, oh, you know, the lineage of maybe, you know, some of the Paulmans is, you know, has survived through the Great Collapse. And, you know, even though like 90% of the population died, you know, they haven't completely forgotten perhaps their you know, their culture. Oh, and this is a weird line too, in the original. So I was just like really I can't remember what he says. Next one, I'm gonna have to get up. I'm gonna have to have my laptop up here and have the original script to kind of compare and contrast, so I could do that on the fly. But yeah, just to make the line make a little more sense. He's like, oh, you know, maybe this is a place we've heard all these rumors about, you know. Yeah, and you could read, you know, so I don't understand all these all the Let's Plays that are just like, I'm gonna really crappily act out like all these characters because I have nothing else to say. Like, I mean, I don't mean to crap on like other people's work, so I apologize, but this is not my style. I don't really find that too entertaining personally, and I the rare times I have to, you know, look up like a part of a game or something like that, I just mute those people. So if you're one of those people, I apologize. Yeah, feel free to mute me if you want. I don't really care. So yeah, I talk about this on my podcast a little bit. I think it is kind of important to do some things just for hobby, and to not, like, once money enters in any shape or form of what you're doing, it's gonna have some amount of control over you and your project. It's just like inevitable. Like for my business, I use like classic video games and virtual reality and stuff like that for corporate entertainment and team building. And you know, if I was like doing it just for fun, and I could there we go. Oh yeah, I do have to do the macro here. If it was just like up to me to pick all like the entertainment, I would put out like 6-player Guardian Heroes on Saturn, and like, you know, 12-player, like what, 10-player, 12-player Saturn Bomberman and stuff like that. But it just wouldn't like reach as many people. They would not know like what these games are, and they'd be less willing to try, and I would just get a lot of like, well, where's Pac-Man and stuff like that. So it commercially, you know, even if I'm doing something commercially, I do my best to, you know, to make it real and still make it true, and to really meet, you know, the other person's needs or whatever. But, you know, when you're doing something for hobby, you don't have to care like how many followers you have, or you know, how big your Patreon is. It's like I make money doing something that, you know, I love doing. It's my normal job, and it's important for me to keep this stuff for hobby. It doesn't mean like, oh, you shouldn't, you know, I'm not saying like Patreons are bad or anything like that at all. And just last night I interviewed the team who did Nappletail. Fan translated the game over 6 years, pretty fantastic. And yeah, so it's kind of cool to talk to other people who kind of have a, you know, similar philosophy as you, and you know, they kind of feel the same. And the other thing too is when you're you know, fan translating or anything like that, you can, this is something they talked about a lot, because, you know, obviously they worked on this thing for 6 years, Nappletail and Dreamcast. You can work at your own pace, you know, and you know, when you get you know, a little burned out, you don't have to feel like, oh my god, like I have to finish this thing, and it just makes it like work or like a chore. You know, you can step away from things like this and then come back to it, as I've done, you know, with you know, Phantasy Star here, you know, many times. And also interesting to me is getting more involved in like the Phantasy Star like fan scene on the PS Cave Discord, trying to find other people, you know, who are into the games and, you know, might be interested in this project that I did, and you know, I could use their help. Oh, so yeah, what does she say? Yeah, so that's pretty much what she says. But then he kind of more has an excuse. He's like, oh, well, you know, you're expecting too much of me, kind of. I'm not, you know, I'm not able to like go kind of at that pace yet. So she's reinforcing like, hey, like, you know, this isn't a game anymore. You know, this is for real. You know, people are counting on us. So, you know, it's time to kind of grow up a little bit. So that, you know, that's part of Rudy's journey, and obviously it's going to change, you know, very abruptly when, you know, you know, they all meet Zio and, you know, something bad happens. Yeah, so, you know, just stuff like Beaker Boy, just, you know, she's a very irreverent character, and, you know, she's obviously, like, pretty sarcastic, so she was a lot of fun to kind of, you know, think about her dialogue and tweak up a little bit. Right. Really Is the Truth reminds me of Catherine. Have you ever played Catherine the Journalist? That's how he closes everything. Oh, and I didn't touch on it before. One of the other, like, all these, like, small, like, you know, lore things and, you know, small things from, like, the Japanese. Han has kind of like a nervous, like, laugh, like a like kind of like a geeky kind of laugh. And I didn't really go overboard with, like, you know, trying to, like, on purpose, like, insert it, you know, everywhere with his character. But you know, he does do that a couple times. And when they first met him, you know, he's like, oh, it's actually kind of scary. You know, it's just like it's fun that they put these character quirks. You know, they wrote these quirks into these characters and everything. And you know, like you know, the English script is good enough for, you know, for people to love this story and to love these characters and everything. But you know, the idea of making it complete, you know, truly complete, you know, was more. I started doing this as something that would just, you know, entertain myself basically, and the more I kind of worked on it, I realized that, you know, I really did have kind of a responsibility, like, not just to the developers but to other players, and you know, that's the main reason why I ended up having, like, this working designs patch and the purist patch, because someone was actually like oh, like, my first review on romhacking.net was this feels like a working designs patch, and I was thinking, like, yes, that's awesome. Like, they're fantastic writers, and you know, their games are entertaining, but I realize more, like, a lot of people, you know, don't care for that style, and that's fine. So that's why I just, like, the really small, you know, one word here or there, like one line here or there, you know, that I added, that maybe I try to think of how a purist would, you know, would look at the script, and you know, the scripts are 99% the same. I have only one more question. It's kind of an Arnoldism. Yeah, I think I added, like, you know, science experiments, but that would be natural, you know, I'm a university, so, you know, what would be unnatural? Science experiments not conducted by someone at the university. Oh, so this is a good example of like all these lines that I think they just didn't know what to do with in the original English. Um, they translated in the original English as the sixth most dangerous thing in the world. And like I said, most of my Japanese notes are from the cutting room floor, which is a pretty official source, as official as I can find. And it's really her sixth least favorite thing in the world. So, to the end player, maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference, but things like that where we clearly someone has explained like what the Japanese is. I figured it was important to try to kind of make that happen. To make those small changes. And this is just something like I added to make, the conversation more interesting. The thing about fifth least. I'm probably going to take more vocal breaks than I thought because my voice is already getting more hoarse than I anticipated. So next time I will have a water or another beverage. Perhaps. Yeah, a lot of it is the same. Yeah, and even like I was like the news editor at Ohio State, which meant like basically head copy editor. So I really liked I liked writing. I have a journalism degree, but I really liked editing for whatever reason. So making language as clear as possible through punctuation and things like that, and correct word usage, like it's stuff that most people aren't going to care about, but I care about, and makes me happy that it's there, and all that. So someone asked me about this actually. My editor asked me like why in this sentence would I have the punctuation outside the quotation marks, and like long story short, it basically, to me, like it alleviates a lot of grammar problems about where a comma or where like the period should go for conversations and things like that. And this is actually English style, so I wouldn't be able to use this on an American newspaper, but this is my project. I can borrow the UK way of doing things. All right, so here we go with Zio. Probably one of the things I'm happiest about is something that just happened like a month or so ago. New information about Zio's backstory, because he really doesn't have any in this game at all. Nor does Rune, for the most part. Yeah, so, just making his dialogue a little more, foreboding, a little more sinister. So, this is not in the purist patch. Someone, my editor said I was going a little too Ghaleon with this line. Ghaleon isn't the lunar character because he's kind of a mocking, hard day. So whatever. It's all for fun, man. It's all for fun. And I do have the purist patch, for someone who doesn't want to read something like that. But for people who are gonna chuckle, I mean, it makes me laugh. So this is just a terrible pun. Yeah, so these new story elements came out about Zio, and it was like, oh my god, like, I really feel like the story for this game is already, like, one of the best 16-bit stories, and as a whole, PS1, 2, and 4, and even, like 3, because it's a cool, idea, offshoot of the story, these pretty much make the best cohesive story, a multi-game story in, like, classic gaming. I can't think of anything that, I would put above Phantasy Star. And, yeah, I feel like these new details about Zio and Rune just, like, really tie this, like, those are the only things that were, like, kind of, like, not great about the storytelling, I think. And, now it's like, wow, this was actually completely thought out, and they just didn't have time to kind of implement these other, these other pieces of backstory. So, I'm really happy to be able to bring that, to PS fans now. Oh, and I think he doesn't even have a line here, the Principal Croft. And, like, video games are all about, overcoming, you know, your especially like RPGs, like, you know, becoming more than, you know, what you were, you know, leveling up, like, you know, in real life, basically the character's life, not just their like strength level. So I thought this was a cool moment to be like, hey, you know, Han, like, why are you even going? You know, it's like, this isn't your fish to fry. You're not a fighter. So I thought it made Han look a little bit more, you know, like he's obviously kind of a scaredy cat because he's not a fighter. But, you know, you put a lot of people in a, you know, a situation where, you know, their loved ones are, you know, in trouble. And, you know, they're going to do things that they normally wouldn't do. And they're going to show you that, you know, they're braver and a little bit more adventurous than maybe you thought. So I thought, and Han definitely exemplifies that. So I felt it was nice to give him that little moment. So this is like this little burning jag with all these running joke about all the like these crappy jobs in this game. Everyone just says like, trust me, you don't want my job. Yeah, so, and again, like, going back, like, the you know, the kids talking about, like, oh, like, you know, we got, like, great bars here or whatever. It's like, all the kids in this dorm are, like, not doing any work. And, you know, like, he looks at, like, we're gonna look at his schedule. It's like, oh, there's, like, nothing, there's, like, no, like, work on the schedule. So that's in the original game. So, like I said, everything I kind of just wanted to expand on. I didn't want to, like, invent, you know, material or, like, anything like that. So, you know, hopefully you think I'm successful. But if you don't, you know, you feel free to let me know. And, you know, I'll think about what you say. So, like, I know a lot of people hate, you know, the working designs, pop culture jokes. The closest I came to anything like that is, we were just playing a lot of Can Jam the summer that, I, started this project, and I thought it would be fun for the kids to have, like, you know, like an actual game that they all, like, played that was, like, you know, like a popular physical game. And it's literally a game you can play with trash cans, so I don't feel like that's going over the line, but, you know, that's not in the purist patch. Yeah, so this is, you know, that's just something funny to think about, because, you know, why do we play Animal Crossing all day and, like, you know, do all the chores and pick all the weeds, but me and my wife won't go out and do it, like, in our own lawn? Like, I don't know. I don't have an answer, but it's true. Let's see, so she's kidnapped. Well, she ran away, actually. She's not kidnapped. Yeah, so it's like, that's just a silly joke. But that doesn't have to be a computer MMO. That could be anything. My editor pointed that out, too, that I shouldn't have MMO in there. Yeah, so beer money, again, that's probably not in the purist patch, but I know a lot about these kind of schools and have strong feelings about these kind of schools, and there are many schools that just will take anybody and just want your money. So, oh, beat it, you perverts is that's a line from Lunar Eternal Blue in a really short cutscene. So just made me think of Lunar, which I love so much. Yeah, so, you know, when someone has like a weird thing to say like this, I usually just wrote, you know, something silly to kind of like cap off the line. If it's inane as like, why are you talking to me so close, you know? Yeah, right, kid. No, here's another little thing that's not in the purist patch. And also townies. Yeah, and it's really great that yeah, so we'll get to her nickname in a minute. Alice's nickname, which is another thing that they just had no idea how to translate. Oh, I just reread something about this fountain the other day, actually. I think, like, I think this person, like, jumped in, too, and he's trying to get you to do it in the original. I can't remember now. Let's not jump in today, though. But, yeah, so, yeah, I got all this, like, really, you know, really good feedback. And even some of the people who were a little more, you know, less concerned about my feelings, let's say, you know, I sent everybody, you know, a message on romhacking.net that like wasn't mean or argumentative and was basically just like, you know, you can kind of like kill people with kindness a little bit, you know. So I'd just be like, oh, thank you for, you know, your feedback. You know, I appreciate it. You know, and if it was something I was gonna, you know, change a little bit, I would actually let them know, like when I, you know, when I made some changes, and I, you know, encourage them to give it a shot. And there's one like really mean review on romhacking.net, and this person has never messaged me back. I sent him like a super nice message, and I don't think they had a lot of other reviews for other games, so I think it's just someone who just like review bombed me kind of. But everybody else, even there's one person who said like, oh, I really like the writing, but you know, I don't like the, you know, the added jokes and things like that. That between my editor, who was kind of like, you know, there's kind of like too many jokes, and the style of the first town, the college town, is going to be hard for people to kind of get over. They're going to think like the whole game is like this, and things like that. So, you know, I really thought about these things, because at first I was like, well, you know, no one has a sense of humor, or, you know, I just like the working design style, you know, that's my choice, or whatever. Yeah, the more I thought about it, the more that you know, I realized that there was room for two ways to kind of go about this, and it took like a couple hours to just kind of mop up the script and take out some of the more, you know, some of the sillier things that I added that were, you know, just like a little bit, you know, frivolous or a little bit goofy. So, you know, I can't speak to other people's time or how they, you know, deal with feedback or things like that, I guess. But, you know, for me personally, part of why, you know, I wanted to do this is, you know, just honestly, like, make people happy. You know, video games, especially, like, mostly classic video games, basically, they just make me, like, so happy. And I feel like I love these characters so much, and I feel like I know them so well in, you know, these classic games, that, you know, I just wanted to, like, you know, improve upon it a bit if I was able, and to kind of share that with other people. And it's like, you know, some people on PS Cave are still like, oh, like, I like the original script better, and, you know, things like that. And, you know, that's fine. It's like, this isn't, you know, this isn't George Lucas's, like, some people act like, you know, it's the special editions, and, like, you know, by making something like this that's, you know, more about, like, the writing than just, you know, making some programming changes, which everyone seems to be totally cool with. But as soon as you, like, start making some enhancements to the script, you know, people are like, well, why'd you change this, and why'd you change that? I feel, you know, that's been my take, at least. You know, I could be wrong overall. I don't know how other scenes are either. I just know, like, the Phantasy Star, and now I'm getting to know, like, some Sega, in general, fan hackers a little bit better. But yeah, it's like, you know, the originals are still out there. They're not going anywhere. You know, I definitely did intend to make this the definitive version, you know, of the game. But, you know, I mean, it's like, I'm not gonna tell Sega, like, oh, you know, your next Switch port, you know, you should use my translation or something. You know, it's not like that, and the originals are not going away. Yeah, I think it just happens to be, like, my take with a lot of hacking projects is I generally prefer, like, a fan re-edited version, because, I mean, like, I probably just come at things differently. You know, I'm kind of like a writer by trade. You know, that's just like one of my things. So I'm just more, you know, like, about that. Yeah. So this is, you know, just subtly changed, but not too much. Oh, so Alshine. This is called Alshine in the English Phantasy Star 4, and it's clearly an allusion to. Yeah, and this is like a really. There's a lot of lines in the original script that are just kind of redundant, that are just like hanging out there for no reason. Because the previous line, she says, like, you know, it was a while ago that I heard about this, and then she says, but this, I'm talking some time ago. So it's like, well, you know, if we're gonna have the second line there, let's give it some kind of relevance. So, you know, to kind of mark the time, she's like, oh, well, I was your age, Rudy, too. And that, you know, for the player, you know, just further cements the difference between them in terms of maturity and age. You know, so it's like, you know, kind of a double opportunity when you got a throwaway line like that, just to, you know, try to do something a little bit more with it to add to the story. Oh yeah, so he says "you devil" in the original. I don't know, it just doesn't. And Han's like a smart guy. He uses bigger words, I think, than the English original translation kind of has him doing. That's one great thing about the French translation. He really did a great job. Obviously, I don't speak French. I'm an ignorant American, but he's from Quebec, and so he's bilingual. So a lot of the kind of character differences that we were so busy, like, you know, fixing the script and putting in this lore and stuff like that, that we never had this like big round table of like, okay, you know, who are these characters really? You know, what are like their personalities or personality tics, things like that, like a top level. We never actually really did that, my editor and I. So in the French version, Han speaks more like a scientist, basically. So that's why he's like, oh, you know, instead of having to say like "you devil," you know, something like extortionist is a little bit more accurate, and it just seems like something more he would say, you know. Yeah, and in terms of gameplay, I mean, everything's really different, you know, the first time you play a game versus, you know, like the 20th. But, you know, Phantasy Star 4 is overall a pretty easy game. So, you know, I'm not interested in RPG speedruns, to say the least, basically. That's fine, you know, if people are. It's a cool, different way to enjoy a game, but, you know, I play RPGs kind of for the story. I don't really care that much how they play, honestly. And I'm like the visual and the audio are kind of more important for me, I guess, than the gameplay. So I love PS4. It makes it a lot easier to even do like a commentary like this, because, you know, I can be pretty much brain dead about the combat, and you know, music's cool, and it's pretty to look at, I think. Yeah, so just as a gameplay thing. Oh, one cool thing, if you're like a long time PS fan, just for the first time ever, there was dialogue that if you go to Molcom, it sounded like, oh, like you're not welcome here, and it's like I didn't know where this dialogue was in the game, so it's like I'm just looking at the files, and then just out of like absent-mindedness or something, I was testing the stream to ready up to do this, and I went to Molcom without going to Zema, and it's like there's the Motavians are like here and everything. It's like they won't let you in, but it's funny. It's like it's meant to look like a functioning town. So probably like 99% of players are never gonna go to Molcom before they hit Zema, because this game is so linear, and you know, you don't have to go out of your way to find it or anything. But that's just like a really cool detail. PS4 is just full of like so many, like they took so much of their knowledge from and what they learned about making, you know, PS1, 2, and 3 into this game, and the more and more I got into it, the more I appreciate just like the game design and the flow of PS4. I really think it's one of the best 16 RPGs in that regard. So here we go with Rune. So the nickname for her in the English is 8-stroked warrior, like something ridiculous. So the TCRF says that a lot of times 8 is just a word in Japanese used to signify like a many or a lot. So they suggest tear him to pieces, Alice, as her nickname. That's a lot to write, and obviously I don't have a lot of space here. So another interpretation of that could be dismemberer, which I just found like funny and ridiculous. So in this one she now is just called Alice the Dismemberer, and obviously she would hate that nickname, so I just added this line here because it's completely ridiculous. You know, and it, you know, establishes, you know, more of a history and more of a you know, a deeper friendship from these two right off the bat at the beginning of the conversation. Yeah, and then I can't same thing. I can't remember the original line here, but you know, just adding personality into this game, and you know, saying a lot within like the 2 lines, you know, of dialogue that we have here. for the one one dialogue box, I suppose. So, someone I talked to the other day thought this implied that they had slept together. That's not. I had never thought of this line like that, and that's not what I intended. But I mean, I think it's good if it sparks some kind of like, obviously they have a history. That's kind of what it's meant to say. So I'm not a programmer. Shoutouts to VGE who recognized that, my editor, Scroll 2, did this. He recognized that, and I should have known this as a copy editor. Protege, has like these accents, because it's a borrowed word, as does fiancé, which we'll see in a little bit. And he made that little graphic for me to insert in here. Yeah, so establishing was a little bit more, contentious, and Rudy doesn't, he's brash as well, establishing why their personalities, are not going to gel, because they're kind of at each other's throats the whole game, really for not that much of a good reason, I think. So, it's what's there, it's written, it's what they intended, so, I just wanted to make that more full-bodied, and a little bit more, like, believable, I guess. And I think we might have just passed it, where she tells Rudy to cut it out, and not like both of them, like I think she does in the English. This is actually in the Japanese. She tells Rudy to shut up and not Rune, which is, I don't know why she does that, but again, that's the original, so that's what I'm gonna, stay true to. Yeah, Princess Bride, truly a dizzying intellect. It's a great phrase. I know he doesn't have crosscut yet, but I just thought that phrase was funny, and he'd be trying to throw his weight around to this new like guy who just has like a like a little magic stick. So this is a line I just had to change because Rune does know who Zio is. They have a history together, and it's part of the events of Phantasy Star 4 and the original setting about why these characters are here on Motavia. So I had to change this to from like no idea to he's hesitant to kind of tell them. Yeah, and Han, being a scientist, but he's more a heartfelt guy, than like he's a little bit more emotional than Rudy or Alice are. It's funny at the beginning they say how many these towns are so far. It's like, do you guys play Phantasy Star 2, man? Like, come on. These things are like right next to each other. It's not far. It's like two monster battles away. But that's what they say, so we kept it. Interesting. She doesn't have this line in the Japanese like that. I haven't decided yet, and they just added it in the English. I think it's cool. It just makes her seem like more like she's in charge of this, and she's gonna make the final decision. So I like that they added that in the original English a lot. So whatever you think about their history, I wanted to bring it out a little bit more in the script that they do have a history together. You can imagine, whatever you like that history to be. You can stick around for him. Yeah. And again, just when you're changing dialogue, it just needs to feel natural. And, once I really got into this, and I really feel like I had kind of a sense of the characters, like a lot of this dialogue just kind of like writes itself, because you feel like you know that character and you kind of know the voice that they speak in. Yeah, it's like, what a Rhodey Ashley. So his name is, I don't remember why, but the Kana translations that I've seen, his name really should be not like Ashley, it's more like Ashley, like Slay. Twinkie, I had to take that out of the purist version. I feel like it's not a product, it's just part of the lexicon, but, maybe not everyone feels that way. Yeah, and it is a total ass, so I thought Rudy should say so. Poor Han, so embarrassed. Got his little lady friend. Alright, so we stick Rune at the front. So one little thing I did here will not make sense if for some reason you put Han at the front of your lineup, but again, I try to think of things like 99% of players will never do this thing, and you would only kind of do it because, like in like a postmodern way, you know what you're supposed to do, so you do the opposite. That's the only reason why you would ever like put him at the head of the line, because he's so wimpy. Oh, let's go visit his parents. Yeah, I liked his interactions with his parents a lot, so I don't even think I don't think we did anything to change it. One thing I had to start being careful of is a lot of these, as you notice in the game, you know, you talk to someone and depending on what's happening in the story, you know, they have something different to say. So in the coding, it's all like event flags, and they're not apparent, basically, and I don't really understand how they work. So there'll be like, you know, I a lot of times would accidentally have someone like saying something like really, you know, inappropriate to like the scene that they were in or something like that, like NPC dialogue. So a lot of bug testing. Yeah, so I think we tweaked this a little bit, but you know, basically the same thing. So Seiya, I did make a little bit different. Instead of just like the demure, you know, teehee, I'm an anime girl, you know, kind of thing. She's a little bit more of her own person, I think, in this. Yeah, fiance. And the first time I made this version, I put the accent on the wrong E, and I burned the cartridge and everything. That I played it, and I was like, man. Yeah, so there's different spellings if it's a man or if it's a woman, it's referring to fiance. Yeah, so I again, I can't remember what she says in the original, but you know, she's like, oh, well, you know. Yes, and I did make up Honey Bear. Think of like How I Met Your Mother, you know, Lily Pad and Marshmallow, you know, their nicknames for each other I just find like adorable. So just try to think about what you could do with Han, and that's what I came up with. Mooch. Yeah, so added this little line here because why would you ever put him at the front of the line? And I hope it's not offensive to call tall people bean poles. I'm 5'4", I'm very short, so. These kids all have pretty silly things to say. I think, what did they say in the original? They call her just Seiya or something. It's like a little odd, so I just changed it all to Ms. Seiya. My wife's a teacher, so she still goes by Ms. Yeah, this weird kid. I have no idea what the point of this kid's dialogue was, so yeah, so that's a little silly too. When I get to this, anytime I see it, I'm like, oh, I should probably take that out, but whatever. It's obviously not the purest patch, so. So I you know, Han just kind of like got to eat that line like this little kid. Like, it makes me so sad. So it's like he should have like some kind of retort, you know. Oh, so these are, so like obviously there's a lot of silly things, you know, in Phantasy Star 4. Like moments like these. So I just took what was there and just like, you know, expanded on it a little bit. So instead of just having Golden X3, he's like, oh, I read this, but like Volume 3 sucked, you know, because like nobody really likes Golden X Volume 3 for whatever reason. We didn't even get it in the States. I think it either came out in Sega Channel or it only came out in the UK. But everyone says it's not good. I've only played it like once. Go Newman that could, just being silly. I think this, yeah, so things like this where it's like, oh, it's a kid's picture book, like, you know, let's make it a little more interesting, you know. So this is a play off of one of the, I can't remember even which one, Phantasy Star Adventure or Phantasy Star Gaiden, but yeah, it's just like it's like the dumbest plot. It's like Alice has a kid somehow. Alice from Phantasy Star 1 is a kid, and you play the game as a kid, and I don't know, she comes in at the last minute, but she looks like completely different. She helps you stop this guy, and then she just like leaves. It's like, this sounds terrible. So I just made it like, oh, this is like a fake sequel, you know, and you know the other ones take years, 1,000 years apart. This is a joke because everyone loves Echo the Dolphin, but I don't know anyone who's ever beaten it. Obviously, that's just my life experience, but I could also never beat that game, as interesting as it is, so. I love Sonic, so why not have Rudy love Sonic too? I mean, it didn't have to be Sonic, you know, they could just be like any fast hedgehog, honestly, but, you know, why not give him the same theme song? Yeah. And this was a cute moment that, you know, in the original, she's got a picture of Han, like, on her, you know, bed table. It's like, this game is chock full of just so much cool little detail like that. So I just added, like, oh, you know, he looks nervous. He's just, like, getting his picture taken. I mean, he didn't even want to have them come into Krupp, you know, and me say in the first place. So, you know, he's just a shy dude. Let's see. So I think we'll call it quits here. After we get to our the cave up here for part 1. Yeah, and whenever you're watching this, you know, I streamed all this because it's just gonna be, it would be a lot of work to, you know, video edit. It's enough that I edit my podcast like obsessively. If I intended that for video, I would just never get it done. So, yeah, so I'm streaming this, but it's just like to, you know, to really have an archive of it. And, you know, so something I can just live, you know, on YouTube, basically. It's a companion to the patch. Oh, come on. We're almost there. Let's get this show on the road. Bodied. All right. But yeah, again, so, yeah, so this is part 1. I'll be playing through the whole game and, you know, just kind of taking you behind the scenes a little bit about decisions that we made and, you know, the original Japanese and, you know, all this lore that, you know, I've researched and other awesome people like Rebecca have translated into English just out of the, you know, just general kindness and because they wanted to. And it's really cool. Flayly. So one note, I did make a version of this that completely matches up with the Master System version, and in the English Master System version, it's actually probably closer to what the Japanese is for the spell names. They're just like fire and, oh geez, I can't remember the other ones, but they're very like literal about like what the thing is, and then Phantasy Star 4, either because of on purpose or because they didn't know what they were doing, Flare got translated to Flayly, and, you know, etc., etc. So most people seem to like, the Phantasy Star 4 versions of, like, the magic and things like that, so eventually I realized that no one cared about this other version of the patch that I did to match the Master System version, so I just have this one now. Big Queen fan. We were talking about the nature of magic versus technique, actually, on PSK the other day, and I realized that I probably could have put some of that into the script here. It's like, well, why is... I mean, they're, like, obviously, you know that they're surprised that this thing is different, but the game doesn't tell you, like, why you know, this power is different than, like, you know, Foy or anything like that. So, if I ever find a really good answer, outside of, like, techniques were developed so just, like, average people could use them, but functionally they seem kind of the same, don't they? Yeah, so if I ever find a really good answer, I'll probably put that into the script. So, yeah, so thanks for hanging out. Again, this is Chris Hatala, Ghaleon Unlimited, GhaleonUnlimited. Unlimited. You could reach me, send me any comments. I'd love feedback on, you know, the patch, you know, how we're doing with this, you know, creators commentary. You know, if you're just a PS fan, you know, feel free to say hi. I get to talk to people from, like, all over the world. It's super cool. And, yeah, we'll see you next time. We'll get going into new. I will do a bunch of grinding. This is one of the only 2 places of the game that I think you need to grind it all to afford all the titanium stuff. So I'll get all that out of the way, and then oh no, I can't because we have to do Grandfather Doran's cutscene. Oh well. Well, I'll find more interesting things to talk about while we grind, and it's only gonna take like 20 minutes. So yeah. So thanks for checking this out whenever you have, and I encourage you as well. You know, check out romhacking.net. Yeah, I mean, there's a billion awesome fan hacks for, like, all these games, and I generally prefer, like, these script remixed versions of all these games. I just think it brings out more, since these were never made, you know, in our native language, in English, in the first place. So, you know, obviously there's going to be imperfections there, and you know, fans who love these games just take it upon themselves, because they love it, to make these games really as best they can be. And I think it's about giving the English player as good an experience, or even better, than the Japanese player got. I really think is, like, the goal behind most of these, you know, retranslation kind of efforts. So I hope you enjoy it. You know, I hope you you know, it's cool you enjoy Phantasy Star enough to check this out, and I will see you next time. Yeah, again, PS4